for just a few seconds, just to notice that you're stressed. Take a deep breath in through your nose, exhale through your mouth, and visualize the stress leaving. And if you do this, it only takes 5 seconds. But if you can do that as often as you notice feeling overwhelmed throughout the day, it's incredibly effective.
Step into the world of success with your brand amplified, the ultimate podcast designed to unravel the intricacies of thriving businesses. I'm your host, Annika Jackson, and I'm on a mission to uncover the stories, strategies, and secrets that have propelled entrepreneurs and business leaders to success.
The pre-interview, pre-push record conversation that Scott Anderson and I just had has made me even more inspired to have you as a guest. Scott, you are the founder of Double Dare. You are the author of You Are Not Toast, and you have such a great, vast expertise to bring to us today. So I really appreciate you coming on your Brand Amplified.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I really enjoyed our pre-interview conversation. We had about 10 rabbit holes going there, but I'm really glad to be here. I'll be honest, most of the advice about burnout is, as we were discussing, is just completely wrong. It actually makes burnout worse. And that's why I wrote You're Not Toast.
Yeah. Well, before we get to that, I want to learn a little bit more about your journey from copywriting to taking over the family business to becoming a really purpose-driven coach, nonprofit founder, author, and expert.
Boy, I wish I knew how any of that happened. Yeah, one thing led to another, I guess. I think it's fair to say. Yeah, I really enjoyed, I had an English degree in creative writing. I had recently translated Beowulf from Old English. And when I graduated from college and found that there were no employers who were jumping up to hire anyone who could translate Beowulf from the Old English. And somebody told me you could get a job writing ads for an advertising agency. I had no idea and stumbled into it, had great fun, really loved it. Ultimately came back to run a family business, a whole other story in itself, speaking of burnout. And they say that the road to hell is paved with family businesses. And I would agree. I coach a lot of people who are in that spot. Then I started my own advertising agency and PR agency with that in common and did that for 25 years and sold it to my employees, my partners, my business partners. And as I was ramping up my coaching practice and also as I was completing graduate school and becoming a licensed mental health therapist and starting the not-for-profit we talked about to treat post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah. Wow. What was that pivotal moment that caused you to change what your career trajectory was? To go from having this successful long-term business to getting into the mental health field, starting nonprofits?
Yeah, I think burnout is sometimes, we think of burnout as being bad, and certainly it's suffering. It can be suffering. In my experience, it's mostly self-inflicted suffering, which is a good thing because we can do something about it. If it was really our boss or our coworkers, we'd be screwed, right? But because we really cause our own burnout, there's a great way out. Burnout for me has been really awful and suffering, but it's also been kind of the phoenix emerging from the ashes several times. And, burnout for me has mainly been kind of a reluctance to make changes that are really critical for me to make. It's for kind of sticking with something past its expiration date. And so, while burnout is not something that I wish on anybody, I've really found that life beyond burnout is always better. And in owning my advertising agency, I was burned out. I went as far with it as I felt like I could go, but we keep changing as people. And one of the reasons I think I burned out was because I kept sticking with something that was no longer mine to do. And there was a new season of my life, but I kept going back to it, thinking that would be the answer. And it really wasn't.
Isn't it funny how the universe, God, whatever you want to say, continues to show us these lessons over and over again until we finally get our head out of the sand and say,
yes.
Yeah, because I've done the same thing. I've gone in and out of entrepreneurship, taken VP roles at agencies, had my own agency, and I always find the grass is not always greener on the other side. I have had these situations of getting really sick and realizing, oh, this is my body's reaction to what I'm doing because this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. This is not for me at this moment in time. And I'm trying to hold on to something that I really shouldn't be.
Yeah. That's really, I've found that so often, the problem with burnout so often is that we find something that works, which for overachievers and perfectionists is I'm going to work harder than anybody else. I'm going to worry more and care more than anyone else. And that combined with whatever talent I have puts me at the top of the pecking order. I get rewards in a variety of ways, recognition, money, advancement, whatnot. But unfortunately, that strategy of being a perfectionist and working harder and overachieving, et cetera, it really, really works until it doesn't work. And so often I find that folks in their late 30s, early 40s in particular, one of the times where they meet burnout is right about there, at least I did, mainly because sort of what got me here won't get me there, that I can't scale that kind of effort, pulling all-nighters and all the rest of it, especially as our lives become richer with significant others or partners or children or a business that grows past the point of being able to micromanage everything. But we are kind of superstitious, many of us, around, that was how I got here. That works. It ought to work again. My magic wand ought to work again. And it just plain stops working. But for many of us, we just keep insisting that it should work and keep doing what we've done in the past, way past the point where it's healthy for us to do it.
Well, you used the word micromanaging, and I think that's really important because, and I actually learned this in a volunteer organization before I had to bring this into the business world, but I was the person who always said, oh, I can do that. I can do that. I can give you these resources because I collect a lot of information, a lot of people. And so I probably do know somebody who can help you with something, or I know how to make those connections. But the reality is I didn't have the time or energy to follow up on all of those things. So I'm not just letting myself down, I'm letting other people down as well. So can you talk a little bit about that lie, right? That helps get us to that point.
Yeah, it's sort of part of it is that I like to say that our superpowers turn to kryptonite. The very things that have made us or helped us achieve wonderful things and genuinely serve people begin to turn our lives in a bad direction. The very talents and the kind of the core beliefs that got us to succeed and genuinely advance businesses and other people and so on, all of that is great, but it gets to the point where it can't scale, it doesn't scale, and it doesn't work anymore. And the idea of just putting more effort and more concern and care into everything ultimately makes burnout worse and worse and worse. The very things, and this is one of the reasons why burnout tends to accelerate at the end, is that we try to fix burnout the same way we fix everything else, other people's problems or our own business problems. But the problem that with burnout anyway, is that working harder and trying more and caring more actually make it worse. It actually makes the problem worse. So it begs the question, okay, what do we do then? Yeah. In graduate school, I didn't, getting a mental health degree, I didn't find anything that specifically addressed burnout. But as a achieving kind of a person, I just figured I'll find it and I'll work harder and I'll make it happen. But it's the opposite, actually, of trying hard and working harder and worrying more that solves burnout ultimately.
Interesting. Talk to us a little bit more about that and your work deciding specifically, right, to get this degree and then use this process. And I want you to talk about your process as well to help entrepreneurs, business owners who have a lot of success but are struggling with these issues.
Right. I started to work with other entrepreneurs. My therapy practice is mainly focused on other entrepreneurs and business owners. And I started to work with them on burnout, trying to solve my own problems, basically. And I would stumble into something and I would share it with them, something that worked for me. And I would share it with one of my clients. And ultimately, we created a group that met once a week in my office where we would just try things. It was sort of an incubator of sorts. We would try things. And if it worked, we would sort of file it away. If it didn't, we'd ditch it. And we began to find a couple of things. And one of the most important discoveries was that, what most of us believe that I'll be able to regain my energy and regain my positivity if I have a good night's sleep tonight or a long weekend or a vacation, or in some cases, a sabbatical. The idea is that, every 50 weeks, I'll take 2 weeks of recuperation. But what the science says, and what I discovered firsthand, especially with this group of professionals, is that that's simply not how the body recovers from stress. And what's much more effective is, instead of taking a 5-week sabbatical, I've had clients take 6-month sabbaticals and come back to work every bit as exhausted and defeated as they were when they left, if not more. What the science says, and certainly my experience confirms, is that to take micro vacations, mini vacations throughout the day, to allow our bodies to completely cycle through a stress cycle, so that from arousal and being triggered to the wind down, and then to ultimately let it go. And we have developed techniques that only take 5 seconds to do this. And if you can take a 5-second mini vacation throughout the day, whenever you notice that you're upset, that is much, much more effective than even a week's vacation or a long weekend or, a sabbatical. So, the techniques for solving burnout are very well documented now. We really know what works. The problem is that it's about as counterintuitive a solution as possible. Relaxing for overachievers is not where people naturally go. So, and we get that, right? Because everybody, all of us have been told, well, you should meditate. You should meditate 15 minutes twice a day or 30 minutes twice a day. We all know that. And the jury's in, of course, that works. But when if you tell somebody like me to meditate, maybe they'll do it, but probably they won't. So instead, we have a lot of really practical techniques that we've kind of worked out over lots of trial and error. And ultimately, I was eating my own cooking. These solutions had to work for me and then for my immediate group of clients. And what we found are techniques that are very simple, but very counterintuitive. For example, when you notice that you're triggered, we have a technique called the R&R technique. And the key is just to notice that you're upset, not to figure it out or try to solve it, which is our go-to. We always want to either fix it or avoid it. But really the answer in this instance is just to be with the fact that you're anxious or stressed in this moment for just a few seconds, just to notice that you're stressed. Take a deep breath in through your nose, exhale through your mouth, and visualize the stress leaving. And if you do this, it only takes 5 seconds. But if you can do that as often as you notice feeling overwhelmed throughout the day, it's incredibly effective. It's not the complete answer for burnout, but it gives you light at the end of the tunnel. But this is an example of techniques that are very counterintuitive. And that's kind of what made me think maybe it'll work, because I had tried all the intuitive things, all the things that came naturally, and none of it worked. But this really works.
It's so interesting that this is one of your techniques, because I will say that the days when I use that technique, the days are richer.
Yes.
I'm more relaxed. I feel like I get more done and it's not for burnout necessarily, but I guess in a way it is. It's to manage my ADHD and just take a little break to reset myself. So I try to be really intentional about, and it doesn't always work, but about stepping away from my computer and all the work that's still going to be there, to have lunch, to walk the dogs, to just read something for fun for 5, 10, 15 minutes. And when I do those things, I come back, like you said, a little refreshed, ready for action, ready to step into the next thing. And it could be work related. It also could be home related. Having a partner who is neurotypical, he likes to get one, like if we're cleaning the garage, he wants to get it all done in one fell swoop. I can't do that. I need to tackle a little bit, and then I need to step away from it and do something else, give myself a little mini vacation, as you would say, or a little reward, so that I can reset, so that I can then, because otherwise it's exhausting for me, because that's just not the way my brain chemistry works. So I'm hearing that the techniques that you use are great for a number of different modalities, not necessarily just burnout.
Right. Yeah. The techniques were originally created for workplace burnout with high achieving people. I'll give you an example, as good an example as I can think of. One of our clients is still a client, whose name is Ethan, was working 80 hours a week in a family business, as it happens. And he could not kind of get out of this cycle of working 6 and sometimes 7 days a week. He was totally exhausted, totally overwhelmed. And like many of us, kind of had this sense of, what am I doing this for? I'm keeping the business running, but at the end of the day, I'm not seeing my family. His spouse was not pleased about that. He was missing young children growing up. And it was really at a point of despair, which is where a lot of clients that we work with start out from. And they've tried all of their own tricks. They've tried working harder. They've tried trying to fix the problem. They've tried vacations. They've tried everything that they can think of, and nothing's working. And so when we started working with Ethan, we started him with just this process of try to just notice when you're upset. Because what most of us try to do is rub dirt on it and move on. We don't want to notice that we're upset because, for one thing, we're afraid that we'd stay stuck there forever and we'd never get out of it. We'd be sort of stuck in this sort of despair cycle. But that's actually a big part of it. But there are many other steps as well. And one of the most important is to understand as a leader, what your genius zone really is. In his case, he could do all of the jobs in this insurance business that he owns, but he was really losing himself in doing all of those jobs, not delegating, micromanaging, et cetera. So one of the things that we did initially was to understand what his genius zone really is. What are the 2 or 3 things that only he can do, that no one else can do better, faster, or cheaper, and that will move the needle farthest and fastest for his business and give him the most fulfillment and satisfaction. Mm-hmm. And we were able to then create a list of 3 or 4 things that most leaders do very, very well. And he did very well, mainly involved visioning for the company, coaching employees at a very high level, and working to develop the practice. Mm-hmm. And if he spent 5 hours a week doing that, his business could really take off. But when we did an audit, we discovered he was spending maybe a half an hour doing genius zone activity and 55 to 60 hours a week doing things that were just burning him out. So a lot of this process was to take all the things that weren't on his genius zone list, delegating them, automating them, offshoring them, creating an AI bot for them, whatever by any means necessary, but getting anything off his plate that others could do better, faster, cheaper than he could. And we were able to claw back time. At first, it was just 5 hours a week, then 10 hours a week. We finally got it up to 20 hours a week, and his business just flourished when he could stay in his genius zone. And today he works 20 hours a week is the average. He can take vacations, whatever he wants, but his business is much healthier than it's ever been. I mean, it's really automation now, but he's able to be with his family. He's able to be with his spouse. He can take vacations when he wants to. But more than that, the despair, burnout is completely gone. That monkey on his back is really gone. That nagging feeling that I'm just not doing enough. I have to do more. I have to do more. So it's really possible not only to lose that despair and regain who you really are again, but also succeed. So many of our clients have told us in the beginning, it feels like I have to either succeed at home or succeed at work, but I can't have both. And it's a zero-sum game. You have to pick one. And the truth is that you really can do all of that, but you have to do it in a very, very different way. And the main thing is to be able to get the confidence and hope back that there is another way to do this.
And is this why you decided to write the book?
Yes.
Because you're working with these groups in Omaha, Nebraska, but that's not the entire marketplace of people, obviously, who need this information and need to kind of reframe and retrain our brains.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I wanted there to be a way to scale the solution to as many people as possible. So this book, You're Not Toast, covers every detail of our process that we've worked on and refined and refined and refined over the last 10 years. It started in this small group, and now we've worked with thousands of leaders on this burnout recovery process. And what we found is that in 90 days or less, and we actually guarantee the outcome, in 90 days or less, not only will you have shed the exhaustion and the overwhelm and the despair, but also rediscovered yourself, rediscovered your true north, and found not just a hopeful, positive world, but one that's just really exciting and positive. So yeah, the whole book was just to boil it down and get it into as many hands as possible.
Yeah. And tell us about the name.
You're Not Toast. Yeah. Well, this is because I hear so often, it's almost the first thing that my clients tell me when I get on the phone or on Zoom or however we correspond. I say, how are you? And they say, I'm toast. And, the implication is sort of that it's a forever state and that it's irreversible. And so what I heard myself saying is, you're not toast. And I know that's true because we've proven it with so many, in my own case, selfishly, first and foremost, I thought my life was over. I was waking up every morning exhausted, thinking today may be the day that I cannot answer the bell, that I won't be able to get out of bed. It was very much like the Bill Murray Groundhog's Day movie, only sort of a horror version of it, where I would wake up in the morning and I would think, I don't think I can do this anymore. And, what's happened is I really bounce out of bed. I really, as awful as that might sound to somebody who's burned out now. Yeah, it's completely changed everything.
Yeah. Well, I actually think this is probably why you have a flourishing business, because you were the first case study. You have been an entrepreneur in almost every job you've had. And
I'm a terrible employee, I think is the answer there.
And you've had to deal with these issues. So you have an understanding that somebody who became a therapist just to become a therapist would not necessarily have.
Well, yeah, I would say that desperation more than virtue is what's driven me for sure. Yeah, I've really had to eat my own cooking. I mean, I couldn't find anything that specifically addressed the exhaustion and despair of burnout. And, fortunately, there are some people that have done some work on this that's, empirically solid data, but it hasn't been put into practice in any meaningful way. And that's what You're Not Toast is all about, is to put this into bite-sized, actionable, proven techniques that even the most burned out person can execute right now, today.
Yeah. Well, and you're really good at coming up with names. Your background as a copywriter and writer. Double Dare is the name of your business.
Yes.
How did that name come about?
Well, I owe that entirely to my own coach, a beautiful person, Eileen Blumenthal, who, when I was starting my coaching practice, one of the things she would do is to double dare me to do things. And I thought, what a great metaphor, really. And one time she double dared me to do something, or if not, I would have to give $500 to a presidential candidate who was running at the time. His name is Mitt Romney. And I didn't want to do that. And she said, okay, smart guy, I double dare you to take whatever bold step it was. And if you don't do it by tomorrow, you have to write a check for $500 to the Mitt Romney for president. And I didn't want to do that. So, yeah, that's where Double Dare came from. From my coach, Eileen.
Yeah. Well, it's such a clever name. And out of that, I'd love to hear, based on all of the experience you've had coaching high performers, writing the book, figuring out these constructs, coming out with your system to get rid of burnout and get people past that phase. What are the typical clients that come to you and that you like to work with these days?
I tend to work with people like me, and I think like you too, Annika, who are real doers and entrepreneurs, but not necessarily. I mean, they may be entrepreneurs and working for a corporation. I'm working right now with a beautiful woman named Daphne who works for a community college and leads their entrepreneurial incubator program. But she is within this institution, she is an entrepreneur, meaning she has a vision of what she wants to do and goes out and gets it done. Mm. And, the problem for people who burn so hot is that we sometimes burn out. And, sometimes in a greed about wanting to get all of these things done, we just do too much. And we don't set very good boundaries, most of us. If you can boil down, burnout, it's a combination of perfectionism, which, again, you get rewarded for being a perfectionist, and no boundaries. And you often get rewarded for having no boundaries. Mm-hmm. And those two things work well until they don't work. And then they can really be dangerous.
Yeah. How does forgiveness play into the idea of burnout?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for mentioning that. That's such an important concept that I was really surprised to encounter. One of the things, we offer a online burnout assessment, and I'll provide the link for your show notes. And it's a summarization of an instrument called the Maslach Burnout Inventory. A woman named Christine Maslach at Berkeley developed it. It's the definitive burnout assessment tool. And one of the characteristics of burnout that I wasn't aware of until I did some research into this instrument is that one of the hallmarks of burnout is a cynicism and the feeling of kind of a victim kind of a mentality, the feeling that other people are responsible for the way I feel, basically. And it's this, there is an isolation that happens in burnout where the belief is that other people can't see how hard I'm trying, how hard I'm working, that I'm not being appreciated. And out of this comes not only a kind of a cynicism, but a resentment. And I've seen this in case after case. It was really true for me. So when I saw this in the Maslach burnout inventory, it made me think about myself, and what I noticed was that I was really attributing the way I was feeling inside, which was real despair and hopelessness. I was really attributing that to other people, to business partners, to clients of ours even. And at the time, it seemed very reasonable. And I recognize now that it's really just a symptom of burnout. So forgiveness has been, and when people see this, it's not the first thing that we communicate in our program because it catches them by surprise typically. You really have to go through our process to kind of get to the point and experience enough recovery to notice, yeah, there really is, I've got these resentments and they're holding me back.
Wow.
So forgiveness is a huge, huge piece of this. And it's not just current, but also I found past resentments that really, really hold us back. Sometimes we use resentments as fuel, as energy. I'm going to show people that what they said about me isn't true. I'm going to overperform. And it almost feels to some people as though if I forgive them or if I let this go, then I won't have that fuel and I'll be a B+ student or a B- student or something. I'll turn to mediocrity. But in fact, that's really where the promised land is in terms of performance and certainly in terms of fulfillment, is to let all that poison go.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some other parallels between the things that we do. I've worked with a former Zen monk on mindfulness, and a large part of the work is in forgiving other people, but also forgiving yourself and releasing all of that anger, resentment that you have. So I love that this is part of your program. It
was unexpected, for me. I didn't go into this process thinking that that's where we would end up, but following the breadcrumbs and also just desperately wanting to live a new way, I was willing to try anything. And I tried this a little bit with myself and found I got tremendous relief. Tried it with our initial group of therapy clients, and it just works. And it's a very specific process, but it really, really works.
So that's a really nice little teaser to some of the things that you do. I wish that we had several more hours to speak because I know the conversation would be just so enriching for myself and for all of my audience. So Scott, we're going to have your website in the show notes. And
thank you.
On that, right, we'll be able to also have the link to this burnout assessment, which I would say would be step one for people to do. And then what would be the next step for them on their journey?
Yeah. I think taking the assessment is a great idea. If you want to check out the book, go to burnoutbreakthrough.com. One thing that we offer people free, because, we really are on a mission to help people recover from burnout, is a free call with me or with one of our coaches it's usually best if you take the assessment first, but it's a free call to give you some tools right now that you can start using right this minute for free. And we call this Fast Fix Call. It's fastfixcall.com. And, if you're really feeling like toast and you want to get some help right now today, it's not a sales pitch. There's no cost. But what we are really interested in is to give you resources that you can start using right now. So if you're really crispy with burnout, go to fastfixcall.com and, we'll schedule a call. It's a short call, but we'll give you some resources you can start using right now today at no cost.
Yeah. This conversation is more important than ever. With everything going on economically, politically, people wondering if they're going to have a job, if AI is taking away their job or their business, their livelihood, just trying to navigate the world on top of all of our normal responsibilities and being business owners and our families and everything else. I think this is just coming at such a pivotal moment in our lives that people really need to pay attention to before they reach that complete burnout phase. So I know I'm going to take the quiz. I'm going to recommend it to a lot of people in my life. And I hope that everybody listening will do so as well. Scott Anderson, one last question. Do you have a favorite quote, family motto, mantra, verse, poem, words that continue to inspire and bring meaning?
I heard one today. I don't know that this is my favorite one, but I just read this today, so I'll pass it on. I got this just a few minutes ago before we got on the call. So I read this. A friend of mine sent me this. It says, if we are busy being helpful, we don't need to worry about searching for God. Boy, this has really been my experience. If we're busy being helpful, we don't need to worry about searching for God. So I guess that's what I'd leave you with. Just came up today.
Yeah, fantastic. And well, I will look forward to further conversations. I'd love to have you come back on and talk about some things we didn't cover, dive a little deeper, talk about your nonprofit work as well at a future time, if you are open and willing.
Oh, I'd love to. I've really, really enjoyed talking to you, Annika. Thank you.
Of course. So thank you to everybody who's watching this episode or listening to it on your favorite platform. I'll be back again with another amazing guest to share some helpful tips, tricks, and their life story and journey to make your life a little better every day. Thanks again, Scott.
Thanks for listening or watching to this episode of Your Brand Amplified. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast listening platform. And if you want to learn more, check us out at yourbrandamplified.com.